Okay, we'll begin. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining me. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're on Treaty 1 and Dakota First Nations territory and the traditional homeland. I'd like to provide an update regarding the protest that continues in front of the Manitoba Legislature. There are elements of this protest that continue to be unlawful while disrupting the lives of the general public, including restricted access to public streets, noise, and harassment. I want Winnipeggers to know we're hearing loud and clear from you, and what we're hearing is that Winnipeggers want the laws to be enforced. I've relayed these concerns directly to the City of Winnipeg's Chief Administrative Officer, Michael Jack, Chief of Police, Danny Smythe, Chair of the Police Board, Councillor Marcus Chambers, and Public Safety Minister Kelvin Gertson. I've also spoken with our Chair of the Standing Policy Committee on Protection, Community Services and Parks, Councillor Sherry Rowlands, and our Deputy Mayor, Councillor John Orlico. This is certainly different from any other protest that I've seen during my time in office. We've seen temporary disruptions in public spaces in the past, but what's unique in this case is the multi-day occupation of public streets and the noise that is coming with it. The lead agency for this protest is the Winnipeg Police Service. As such, all enforcement is a responsibility of the Winnipeg Police Service, who has the authority to enforce all laws, including the City of Winnipeg's traffic and livability bylaws. It's important to note that elected officials, including myself, are prevented under provincial legislation from directing the operations of the police. When I spoke with the Chair of the Police Board, Councillor Chambers, I asked that he consider calling a special meeting of the Winnipeg Police Board. He indicated he's already considering do so, and for that I want to thank him. This would give the Police Board the opportunity to communicate to the Winnipeg Police Service publicly on the concerns that they're hearing from Winnipeg residents. Tomorrow, I'll be formally calling a special meeting of Council to take place this Thursday, so as a Council, we can hear from our Chief Administrative Officer and explore Council's next steps regarding this protest. And I'll have more to say on these topics soon. With that, I'm available to answer your questions. Thanks, merci, and miigwech.
We'll start with Michael from CTV.
Yeah, Mayor Bowman, we've been seeing some City of Winnipeg trucks appearing to take part in this protest. Do you feel that that is showing that the City of Winnipeg is supportive of what they're doing here? And are we seeing city workers being paid to partake in this protest?
Yeah, I've seen some of the online videos that have been circulating. I can advise that those videos are under review by our public service, and I'm not aware of any conclusions from that review yet, but I'm expecting to hear from our public service in due course.
Thank you for that. I know you spoke to the level of enforcement and stuff like that, but I'm wondering if the Winnipeg Parking Authority is enforcing parking rules around the legislative building, and if so, have any tickets any tickets been handed out or any towing occurred?
Well, firstly, I mean, typically the space on Memorial, there's a certain space on Memorial that is provincial, and so there wouldn't typically be enforcement from city bylaw and other agencies in that space. At least that's my understanding. But notwithstanding, there still are people on Broadway, on York, and other spaces that are absolutely on city property. The City of Winnipeg's police service is the lead, and what's typical when there's a protest is for the police service to take the lead on enforcement, and that would include having the ability to make to take enforcement on things that would perhaps otherwise be done by bylaw and other public service departments. And so the lead on this is the City of Winnipeg Police.
And just to follow up on that, that would also include the livability bylaws in relation to noise.
Yeah, and that's typically, I mean, typically if you call late at night in terms of a noise issue, it is typically the police who would answer those calls in any event. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, some of the biggest complaints that I'm hearing, of course, are the fact that this isn't a temporary, this isn't temporary. This is now day 5. Folks are parking on a public street. That's what's different from other protests that we've seen, which maybe will aggravate motorists in a temporary way compared to 5 days. There's also the noise. There's the noise for local residents. They've been very clear to me, as well as our local councillors. Councillor Rowlands has expressed to me, and I'm sure she expressed to you, what she's hearing from residents. And they're tired of the noise and the disruption on the public street. And I think that's what's really different from other protests. You know, Canadians have charter rights for freedom of expression. They have the ability to communicate their views on a whole host of political issues. But what is unique in this circumstance is now day 5 of a disruption of a public street, as well as the noise.
Thanks, Michael. We'll move to Danielle from the Free Press.
Thanks. So you're calling us a special meeting to explore next steps that council could take or that the city could take. So what do you propose that those next steps could include?
Yeah, I'll have more to say about this tomorrow. When the meeting is formally called, you can expect a motion to be tabled for consideration by my council colleagues. But the primary objective of having a special meeting of council is to allow for an open and transparent forum for our Chief Administrative Officer to apprise not just every member of council, but also the public on these matters, but also to allow for a very open and transparent vehicle for members of council who represent Winnipeggers to be able to communicate their thoughts and ultimately to take steps that council deems appropriate. And so I'll have more to say on this tomorrow and of course during the special meeting of council.
Okay. And as of yesterday, police had said that no tickets had been issued related to the protest. Are you satisfied with the enforcement activity or levels of enforcement that may or may not be taking place right now?
What Winnipeggers are communicating in very clear terms is they do expect enforcement measures to be undertaken. Given that this is a matter involving the Winnipeg Police Service, I'm not legally allowed to direct the operations of the police service. No elected member of council or politician does have that legal ability. But we do have the ability to communicate to the police what we're hearing, and I'm communicating to you today that Winnipeggers expect the rules to apply to everybody. And that includes to those that are occupying our public streets right now for day 5. And so I would like to see this protest that is blocking a public street conclude sooner than later. The method and the timing of that is a matter under the purview of the Winnipeg Police Service, and I respect the fact that they've got the responsibility to undertake that. But I've communicated to the police what I'm communicating to you here today is, you know, this has gone on 5 days, and I think the message of the protest has been communicated. If they are trying to communicate a position that they want the mandates to end, they've communicated that. And so now is the time, and going forward, we'd like to see those streets open and accessible for all Winnipeggers.
Thanks, Danielle. We'll move to Marina from CBC.
Hi there, Mayor Bowman. What do you think of one of the protest organizers saying Winnipeg police are in complete unity with them, and they go on to say they're like part of the team, they're like one of us, just in uniform? What do you make of those comments?
I haven't heard those comments, and so I think that's really a question for the Winnipeg Police Service. I will say that I appreciate the work that they're doing to ensure the safety of everyone involved. That being said, the community has been very clear with me that they expect the rules to be enforced for everyone, including those attending protests.
Thank you for that. You know, obviously, this have methods at its disposal, bylaws, permits. You know, we've seen reports of fireworks being set off in front of the legislature on the road. You know, why is the city not acting on some of those measures that they have?
Yeah, the chief has been clear with our chief administrative officer as well as myself that they are certainly managing the situation. Typically, when it's a police matter involving public safety, those enforcement measures by other branches of the public service don't typically occur. And so, given the public safety element of this, the police is the lead, and they do have the authority and the ability to enforce all laws of the land, including municipal bylaws, noise and other bylaw like neighborhood livability bylaw standards. That is something that the police do have the ability to enforce.
Are you considering a state of emergency?
I'm sorry, I'm just, your cameraman was.
I'm terribly sorry, but they're not enforcing those laws. So
I'm sorry, who are you? Just so everybody can hear. I know, but just so others following can
My
know
name's Thomas.
who's talking. Sure, thanks.
So they're not enforcing these laws. Well, our city's been under siege for 5 days now by people that are trying to stay there. So how can we hold the police accountable to actually get them to do the job we expect of them and count on them to do?
So, and sorry, what's your name again?
Thomas.
Thomas, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. No, it's okay. And it's a fair question. So I do appreciate you raising it. That's one of the reasons why I've contacted the chair of the Winnipeg Police Board so that forum can happen where the police can apprise the police board in an open and transparent way, where police board members who are tasked with communicating the interests of our community to the police service can communicate that. And I've also communicated that in very clear terms to the chief of police. Winnipeggers do expect the rules to be applied, and they do apply to all of us. And so the manner and the method in which rules are enforced by the police are not something legally the Provincial Police Services Act allows me or any other elected member to direct. And so we're working within the confines of the legislation to the best of our ability, and I'll continue to explore other avenues, which council will on Thursday be able to see what we can possibly do. But the police act is pretty clear.
Thanks. We'll move to Simon.
I'll take
Hey, Simon.
I'll take Marina's question. Are you planning to put a state of emergency, declaring the state of emergency?
It's not being considered at this time. I think it is important to note that we are not in the same situation that Ottawa is in right now. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see things escalate. We don't want to see this occupation of our public streets continue or to grow. And that's why I think the dialogue has to happen now, not later. It is relatively contained. I'd like to see it conclude, but the concerns are that that it's going to grow. And so that's why I'm pleased the police board is considering calling a special meeting of the police board. That's why I'm calling a special meeting of council. I had a good discussion earlier today with Minister Gertsen, in which I asked that they consider all options in order to assist us to ensure that the rules are being applied and enforced for everyone. And I want to thank him for his openness to speak, and lines of communication will remain open going forward. You know, we're working within the confines of provincial legislation, and so I think you know, it's important to have dialogue with the provincial government. This is on the steps of the provincial legislature, and we want to work collaboratively with our provincial partners.
Is there something Winnipeg could learn from Toronto and Quebec City where the protest went pretty smooth and the convoy left a day or two after the beginning?
Yeah, I mean that's a question you may also want to raise with the chief of police. But what I've had dialogue with mayors across Canada, including the mayor of Ottawa. I think what we've seen the police recognize in Ottawa is that the protest was able to grow. And that's the concern, quite frankly, that I have, is we don't want to see things expand and grow in the coming days and weeks. And so that's why what I'm hearing from Winnipeggers is a strong desire to have enforcement measures undertaken as quickly as possible, and not to wait until it grows. And I've communicated that very clearly to all of the officials that I mentioned in my prepared remarks.
Thanks. We'll move to Skylar from Global TV.
Hi, Mayor Bowman.
Hey, Skylar.
Yeah, like you said earlier in your address, this is pretty unprecedented with it going on for 5 days now. What about precedent in the future? Are you concerned about, what precedent this might set for future protests that now understand they can go on for a couple of days before anything's done about it?
I am concerned about the precedent that it sets. I think the rule of law matters. Look, I'm a member in good standing with the Law Society of Manitoba. I've been trained legally. I have an appreciation for the need for laws to be enforced. I think it's important to distinguish that lawful and peaceful protest is something that is protected in Canada. But what we're seeing here is more than just a protest. It's the fact that it's on public streets, and it's now day 5, and with no end in sight right now. That's where the real precedent. That's the danger of that precedent is what it communicates to others that would just literally park on public streets, for that length of time, and so, we see temporary disruptions of traffic. We've seen many at Portage and Main and elsewhere that happen. They're typically over within hours, not 5 days, and not in contravention of numerous bylaws and laws that Winnipeggers expect to be applied to themselves as well as to those in this program. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for Winnipeggers to expect that the laws are going to be enforced. But the precedent, you're right to ask the question of precedent. It's definitely something I'm concerned about as well.
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button there. Councillor Rowlands has spoken out against police, their communication strategy. They've named the protest by its official name a couple of times now. She says that's partisan. What are your thoughts on that? Because I do know some other law agencies, namely RCMP in Alberta, have chosen to use the word unlawful and leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's an unlawful occupation of our public streets, and so I have no problem acknowledging. I think that's, there's numerous laws that are being contravened right now. I did see this most recent post by the Winnipeg Police Service. I think it was, at minimum, a very piece of words, and I think it's unfortunate. It didn't help the situation, and so we're trying to ensure calm. We're trying to make sure things don't escalate, and I don't think the language that was used there is helping.
Thank you.
Thanks, Skylar. We'll move back to Michael from CTV.
Nothing more for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Michael. We'll move back to Danielle from the Free Press.
I was just wondering if the province offered any support to the city, or has just wondering what kind of what sort of things were discussed in your conversation with Minister Gertson.
Primarily, I wanted to express to him what I'm hearing from Winnipeggers. I mean, that was the primary reason for me reaching out to him. I wanted to communicate to him clearly what I'm hearing from Winnipeggers, and also request that they just consider any and all options to provide assistance to see this matter resolved as quickly as possible. And and we'll continue open lines of communication with the province, in terms of how we can play a role and what they might be able to offer by way of support. I mean, It's unfortunate. Municipalities are often the ones on the front line of dealing with these issues. I mean, let's be clear, the mandates and the issues that the protesters have are primarily provincial and federal in nature, but yet it's municipal staff, police agents, and elected officials that are caught in the middle. And so, you know, it's one that I think if this continues, the need and the role for the provincial government will only be more needed as this goes on. Hopefully it won't go on much longer, and we'll get back to focusing on other things, including battling the pandemic.
Do you have any concern about crowds coming into the downtown for sporting events tonight, given the demonstrators' presence there?
No, I don't. I would take the advice of public officials in terms of traffic flows. I would refer to the Transportation Management Center and follow the social media feed of the TMC to help with your commute. No, I mean, downtown is for everybody. It's not just for protesters. This is our downtown. It's our city's downtown, and I would take this opportunity to urge Winnipeggers to support local businesses that are locally owned, that are operating in our downtown. You support them online, or you come in person. You know, right now, local businesses need our support more than ever before.
Thanks, Danielle. We'll move back to Marina from CBC.
Hi there, Mayor Bowman. What do you say to Winnipeggers who are frustrated and feel like the officials that could do something about this are pointing fingers at each other? You know, you're saying police have the responsibility. You know, the province has not really said whether or not they plan to do something. I obviously understand that this is a situation where you're talking about provincial legislative grounds and a city street, but what do you say to Winnipeggers who are frustrated, feeling like the officials in all levels are not doing something about this?
I think there's a role for all of us, to be fair. There's a role for all those in positions of authority to do their best to mitigate some of the issues that we're seeing. You know, I'm working within the authority that I and our municipal government has, and that's why I've engaged in dialogue with the police, as well as calling a special meeting of council. And so there is a role for us to play. I'm trying to provide that support right now. There's a role for those that are protesting to follow the laws and bylaws that apply to everyone, including all those who may be trying to influence. And so to the extent that they can do that, I think it's gonna help. But there's a role for the police service, there's a role for the province, and so I share the frustration that Winnipeggers have, and I want you to know that I share that frustration. We're trying to do our best at the municipal level on matters that are primarily provincial and federal in nature.
You mentioned that what the protesters are doing is unlawful. Are you aware of whether they applied for any sort of permits and whether or not they were granted anything?
I'm not aware of any permits that were requested, including for some of the activities they're engaging in right now, like and other things. So I do believe there's numerous laws that are being contravened, parking, parking heavy equipment and semi-trailers for 5 days straight on public streets that the public has a right of access to.
Thank you.
We'll move to Simon.
I'm good, thank you.
Skylar.
Yeah, Mayor Bowen, thanks again. I know that police, I think it was on Thursday, maybe Wednesday last week, they say they were already engaged in dialogue with these supporters. Now these same supporters are planning to, for lack of a better term, invade a public shopping center on Saturday, and don't plan on wearing masks or following any other public health orders while doing so. there's a window of opportunity here for police to stop this before it starts. Will they do anything?
That's a question that you'll need to raise with the Winnipeg Police Service. If the effort is to persuade public opinion, I don't think kinds of actions that could compromise the health and safety of other Winnipeggers is going to be effective. You know, certainly their message that they'd like the mandates to be ended is one that really communicated. They've exercised their freedom of expression. It's been heard. So, you know, to the extent that they would be intentionally contravening measures that our provincial government has put in place to protect the health and safety of all of us, I think we owe it to each other as Canadians to do our best to protect each other. We can still exercise our freedom of speech, and that's something that, you know, as someone who's in elected office who exercises my own freedom of speech like I'm doing here today, you know, that's something that we all value. But there's also responsibilities that come with living in a civil society, and we have responsibility to follow the rule of law and to protect fellow Canadians respectful way. And so, you know, I think we all owe it to each other as Canadians. The Canada that we know and love, we take care of each other. And so that's what the vast majority of Winnipeggers are doing. And I want to thank them. They're not subject to as much attention in stories like this, but I want them to know that their efforts are appreciated. And I know that, Skylar, you and others appreciate the efforts of everybody in the city as well for what they're doing to just comply with the provincial public health orders.
Thank you for that answer. And my final one for you, Mayor Bowman, just on the subject that I believe Marina brought up about permits, porta potties, propane tanks, and wood are all things I saw when I was down there on Friday. Not to the extent that we've seen in Ottawa, of course, but they are still there. Is the city considering removing these, these items from that area?
Well, if in normal circumstances where it's not a matter, you would expect to see and I can't speak to the removal of porta potties, but certainly with other bylaw infractions, to the extent that non-policing officials would be enforcing, you would expect to see that occur. Given the lead on this protest is police, that's really a question for the police who are overseeing the enforcement and who have the authority to enforce all the laws of the land.
Thanks, Skylar. Just going back to Danielle, do you have any final questions?
But thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Danielle.
Marina, are you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Simon?
I'm good.
Okay, I believe that concludes our press conference today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good afternoon. It just caught me off guard. It's okay.